The highly controversial Forest Conservation Amendment Bill 2023 was passed by both the houses of the parliament without much discussion, with opposition staging a walkout, demanding an answer from the Prime Minister on the Manipur issue. Environmentalists and academicians have raised concerns, saying that the bill, in all likelihood, will impact India's ecology and the forest dwelling communities. We are today joined by two eminent environmentalists, Mr. Devaditya Sinha. He is a senior resident fellow at the lead in the climate ecosystems team at the Vidhi Center for Legal Policy, and Ayush Joshi, an environmental technologist. So I welcome both of you to the show at the Federal. I would like to begin with Devaditya. The bill, if you look at it in its entirety, it has changed the definition of forest itself. So this is a very, very big concern because almost 20 to 25% of the deemed forests now will not be under the legal definition of forest, and henceforth will not have any what do you call legal right. So how do you see this? And people have also said that this is not just an amendment; it's a complete change to the Forest Act itself.
Is this to me or Ayush?
Yeah. This is to you. Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharth, for giving me the opportunity to speak here. So, we have to see what this amendment does. Okay, so in the preamble, it says it intends to increase the forest cover. In fact, they have changed the title of the act. They have added this term, Samvardhan, augmenting the forest. But if you see the amendment actually, in the clause by clause, they are giving more exemptions and relaxing the safeguards to divert forest land. And where coming to the definition of forest, of course, in the Forest Conservation Act, the forest was not defined, but Supreme Court has interpreted what is the forest land for the purpose of the act. And it clearly said that, it is not to be seen only by the forest notified, but also which is recorded in the government record. And also it said that states has to identify forest-like areas, okay, and they have to notify them as deemed forest. But deemed forest, which are identified by the state, so they will be part of a recorded forest. But the concern here is like the forests which are not even notified or the recorded, okay, which are supposed to be deemed forest, but they are not anywhere in the record. So those kind of forest will be this amendment is completely silent. It's not a bill anymore. It's going to be act. So this amendment is completely silent on that. And beyond that, it also in this whole 3-4 definitions which the amendment proposes, there's a proviso which says that if the state has diverted any forest land following due procedure before 1996, that means the Supreme Court order in that Godron matter, those will be exempted from the from this category. So it clearly means that even if there is an illegal diversion, I am saying because without approval of the central government under Section 2 of the Forest Conservation Act, what is meant for, after 1980 and between 1996, those will be exempted. So there are 3-4 kind of lands, I clearly said, proposed to be notified, proposed to be deemed forest, and the diverted land before 1996. And beyond that, there are also exemptions, you can use 5 to 10 hectares of land for public utility or security projects, roadside amenities for 0.1 hectare. So these kind of exemptions also prescribed in the whole.
Basically, Devaditya, if I was to break it up for the viewers, it says that the forest land, now since they have actually defined what a forest is, basically, the widespread exemptions given. So now these lands are becoming much more vulnerable, right?
Definitely.
So Ayush, if I could bring you in at this point, the second most important provision of the bill is the exemption for infrastructure projects in border areas. Now they have termed something called linear projects of strategic importance for national importance. Now this is a clause which is debated by almost everybody. 100-kilometer within the border areas, affecting mostly northeastern states and other parts, where these lands now will be you don't have to seek a forest clearance anymore, and these are it can be used for strategic importance, and the term strategic importance has not been defined very well. So what do you have to say about that?
I think, thanks, Siddharth. I think this is the whole the concept. That's how it's working actually. Because if you see in the past also, if you see, for example, most of the road projects that are developed in the hilly regions, mostly in the border regions of China, Tibet, Bhutan, and maybe some parts of Pakistan also. So Pakistan shares borders with with Rajasthan, Punjab, where there is enough room, and also because there is a lot of forest patch that comes into place. But when you talk about places which are sharing Himalayan borders, some parts of Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and the northeastern states, where we are also have been in danger for so long. These kind of infrastructure projects are going to include road projects, which are going to be wider roads, dam projects. Now, if you say hydropower projects, there are specifically in Uttarakhand, we have around 70 hydropower projects planned. And if you see the Ganga Himalayan basin, there are more than 400 dams which have been planned. So you see the impact, you can understand the impact of the devastation that is any which way going on, with or without these bills, or with or without these acts. Now you see, we have had a very clear understanding of what happened in Joshimath. We've been discussing this since January, and we personally have been involved into it since 2010, 11, 12. You see, Joshimath, where the first primary resident was the army establishment, army base. Whenever we started to understand as a society that something is going on in Joshimath, something is wrong in Joshimath, sorry to say, army was the first establishment which left the society behind and moved their bases to somewhere else. Now, imagine we are building roads in highly fragile, highly sensitive areas. We are building so much infrastructure in these places where these places do not have the carrying capacity. We are bringing in tourists and tourism of lakhs and lakhs of tourists are visiting these places, these highly fragile places. Most of these places are basically above. These places are developed on moraines. Moraines is paraglacial sediments in the geological past. There must be glaciers out there. They are not stable. They are not bound together to hold such a weight, such a capacity. And above all of that, these places mostly are lying around or above the main central thrust, the MCT.
Just to intervene, Ayush. So now when we say that these lands would no longer be required to get environmental clearance, so it actually becomes very easy to carry on developmental works in those areas, saying that it's for national importance, right? But these are very, very ecologically fragile places.
Definitely. So that's what I'm trying to tell you, that for a country, having a solid defense system is highly important. But imagine a fleet of 100 big vehicles, and we are at the situation of war. 100 vehicles of fleet of the defense strategic movement is having.
So, this is a very important point, Ayush, that you have raised. Devaditya, if I can just get your response on this, how do we balance this strategic importance or defense requirements, national interests, national security with ecological concerns? It will need very, very fine balancing. So how do you ensure this?
So Siddharth, so I will just want to rephrase what Ayush said. I want to give a background. See, this Forest Conservation Act is nowhere stopping these developments. Okay, not a single project of strategic importance or differential project has been stopped. In fact, they have been given a very fairly fast rate of clearances. What the act does, see, you have to understand. This Forest Conservation Act was brought in 1980. And it's not that all the forests were given clearance before that. It is like states were actually giving the permission, but it says because the forest was previously and the state list was brought in concurrent list, and the state and center both have power, and there was a fundamental shift in the how the government see forest, seen the forest. They said that, forests are national asset, and we have to keep our economic interest as a subordinate to the economic, so the interest of the ecology, the economic interest is subordinate to the ecological benefit of the forest. And it mandated the permission of central government additional to the state's permission. Okay. It is not a blanket kind of thing. It is a two-stage of thing. But because forest clearance, the actual permission is given by the state government. Okay. It's just a additional safeguard. What it made a forest advisory committee, which used to see each of the project to make sure only the land required is given. Secondly, where there is any alternative available, suppose you want to build a road right through a wildlife habitat. So you say, or a eco-fragile hill or something like that, which is prone to landslide. This advisory committee used to have a scientific appraisal of it. Okay. It used to say you have to first find an alternative. You have to see whether it's actually required. Okay. Then if it's required, then what are the mitigation plan? All these things was part of this advisory committee. But now what is this amendment does is that it removes those kind of safeguards. It in the Joint Parliament Committee, Ministry of Environment said that we are going to prescribe terms and conditions. But we
will just come to that point. There was the Joint Parliamentary Committee.
What I'm saying is, let me complete. So what I'm saying is, they have said the Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home Affairs will give the approval whether this is important for national security, national importance. Now, where is scientific assessment? Whether this is required or this is the optimum area about the mitigation plan. So everything will come down to the state and the forest officer.
Absolutely. So just coming to this point, this is a very interesting point that you have raised. When India talks about climate commitments, when we go to global forums and we pledge that India will pledge its commitment, be it your net neutrality or be it your emission standards, so on and so forth. But when you see the overall India's commitment towards global climate summits or global climate pledge, isn't this bill somewhere impediment to those bigger goals?
This is for me?
Asking me?
Yeah, anybody. Yeah.
Ayush, you can go ahead if you want.
So, I would say if you go back in time and
just to give you an example, Ayush, what we were discussing earlier as well. Even the Great Nicobar project that has been cleared, it will actually lead to almost 10 lakh trees, and especially Great Nicobar being an area which is one of the biological hotspots, biodiversity hotspots. This is the destruction. It will be massive. So how do we balance? In one hand,
I think where you're trying to take it also is because we have to bring in Campa fund, the afforestation plan out here. So if you're cutting trees in Andaman and you're planting afforestation, the compensatory afforestation in Madhya Pradesh, doesn't make sense. The ecological habitat that was developed naturally around certain areas, in microbiology,
you can carry on afforestation efforts in other places, but that does not restrict the damage it caused to the natural.
Exactly. So where I'm taking is, if you bring in any basic microbiologist, they will tell you microbiology and the biota found in 1 meter distance would be different from the other.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when we understand that as human being, as species, we understand that there is a difference in biota in one point and point B. Why can't we understand this? Now you see, we are talking about the climate, whatever Ghoshna that we have done in the past, recently in the international folios, you see, there was a time there when the same administration was denying that the climate change exists. Now everything has been linked to, most of the projects, if the environmentalists are talking about it and against it, and trying to guide them through to valuable ways to solve it out with a sustainable viewpoint. Most of the people are bringing in defense and strategic viewpoint. And as I said about Joshimath and then so many other disasters going on around in the country, the government is pointing it out that it is happening because of the climate change. There is no impact of anthropogenic importance. How can you say that? There are so much anthropogenic activities that are sort of motivating these kind of disasters to happen all across, and primarily forest deforestation is one of them. Planning so many hydropower projects or bigger projects, bigger infrastructure projects, be it road hydropower projects or many other projects that we are building out here. So these are the primary reasons. Why can't we change to adapting to some certain sustainable ways of doing it? The material that we're using as concrete in these places is a problem. Why do we have to? I mean, I don't understand. For instance, from a very layman's perspective, I don't understand when you have some place to create hurdles, even in the strategic importance. So many trees are anyway barring somebody to enter. And now you're going to clear it out so that people have a bird eye view and they can clearly see what's out on the other side and they can do whatever. I don't understand.
Yeah, so coming back to Devaditya, I read one of your articles where you have written about unclassed forests, especially in terms of Northeast India. So as you have rightly pointed out that majority of the Northeast India is, the forests there are comes under the category of unclassed forests. So how will this bill impact majority of those regions?
Yeah. So Siddharth, we have to understand the laws in Northeast are very different than rest of India. Okay. So most of the places are under 5th schedule or 6th schedule of under like constitution, and even states like Nagaland, they're under Article 371. They have their own constitution. It's like there are several autonomous councils and districts, okay, which are governed by their own kind of thing. So they have certain exceptions to their lawmaking power. So what happens is in Northeast, people are very closely linked, like their lives and livelihood with the forest. Okay, they are very dependent on forest and for everything. Right. And to respect that, and they have very like several customary laws, okay, which are different from other parts of the country. So the way they see forest is a very like a patriotic way, and all these things is there. So in the if you see the schedule, so it is clearly mentioned that the local this autonomous councils or districts, they have right to make laws regarding forests which are outside notified areas. Okay, so if you see in Nagaland, the state control of the forest is less than 3% or something like that. Okay, 97% of the forest is actually owned by communities. Okay, so and one thing is that how the state sees forest, that is different. And in the amendment, it says that government record will mean also the forests which are recognized by the village councils. Okay. This is, I think, this is only one of the like good part of the amendment. Like it recognizes the forest, like recorded by the village councils. Now the question is, unclassed forest is not a definition under Forest Act or something like that. It is a definition which is used by the Forest Survey of India to demarcate any areas which is outside the notified area. It includes your garden, it includes your tea gardens, orchards, everything, even roadside plantations as well. Okay, the definition under FSI is different. It is not a legal definition. But the problem here is unclassed forest includes both recorded and unrecorded forest. So now the next question has to be, out of the whole Northeast, how much area is actually recorded by the village councils or the state, and how much is not recorded? So so this answer I couldn't have. So there are different views of different people. Some people are saying it is not recorded. Some people says people were not that much aware to record this as a forest. So this no one has the answer. So my concern is like, what about the forests which are not recorded anywhere as a forest, but they exist as a forest-like area? Those will be out of the purview of the act, and it can be misused for palm oil plantation or even mining and everything. Right. The whole thing of palm oil cultivation, all these things. So you have to see it from a very comprehensive view. Okay, so that answer we have to get from the government. Like, tell us how much of this 97% of unclassed forest is actually recorded and not recorded. This answer we don't have.
So, Ayush, even while we were discussing just a little while back, the bill going to the Joint Parliamentary Committee, it was introduced in March, and then it went to a Joint Parliamentary Committee, which consisted of 32 members, and I believe 6 of them had written a dissent note, and also the Ministry of Tribal Affairs, they had raised certain concerns, but despite that, it was unequivocally passed by the JPC. So why do you think? How do you think such scrutiny is missing?
Siddharth, may I add to the question? May I
Yeah,
add a
sure.
question? I'll
Sure.
respond. There's one thing I want to highlight here. In the northeastern states, Sikkim, Tripura, Manipur, the states has actually said they don't need this kind of exemptions for 100 kilometers thing. Sikkim said just 2 kilometers is fine. Tripura said 10 kilometer exemption is fine for us because our borders are not porous. Even I think Manipur Museum, some state has said completely to do away with this thing. So this is what I wanted to add. Even northeastern states ruled by the present government, they also oppose it within the JPC.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
totally.
Yeah, so what you're saying, yeah, absolutely. Very important
I think
point
citizen forum
highlighted
also
by
has around.
Devaditya. What he is saying, Ayush, is that even states have actually expressed their reservations about this, right?
And then more than 1,200 individuals and experts from different subject matter, ecology, geology, and so much. They have written consents. So the strange part is not that they have passed it. The strange part is that they have passed it without changing even a word.
Right,
So
right.
many
Yes.
suggestions, so
Yes.
many guidelines. Why are you putting a bill in a public domain when you don't want to hear any news or any changes, any suggestions from society? I'm sorry to say, but this looks like a whole it's undemocratic.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in the past also, we never have witnessed such a flawed way of moving a bill or a policy. I think
And
it's
especially
historic.
considering that in the parliament, it wasn't discussed at all.
We are technically making history out here. What's this
Yep.
happening, and how where are we moving as a country?
Right. Devaditya, would you like to add to something? What Ayush said?
Definitely, I have said this many times, like, the whole process has been a, farce. I have no reason saying this thing because, see, the 2-3 things you can clearly see. The JPC's work is not to compile questions, answers. Okay, it has to apply their own mind. There is no application of mind, not a single application of mind. They just copy pasted. People have said, Ministry have said, even some responses are not even relevant. So there is no questioning of the MOF response. This is not JPC supposed to do. Second thing is that there are 6 out of the 31 members who dissented. So why they dissented? There has to be something
6 out of 30,
like that.
yes.
Now the same JPC chairperson who was presiding, who approved the bill, he was also the Speaker of the House in the absence of the Speaker in Lok Sabha. The bill was introduced. Okay, I understand Lok Sabha, they have majority, everything. Nothing would have out of it. But the way the same chairperson was also presiding over the session when this bill was approved, and he was not giving a chance to any opposition to speaker. If you see the Lok Sabha session, BJP leaders like because you have taken the name because they are the ruling party majority. So I have nothing against the party as such. I think all political parties are on the same page. So even for the sake of the democratic thing, the country was watching. The BJP leaders, they were given ample time to speak. When a leader from, I think he was from YSR or BSP, they were hardly given 1 minute to speak, and he was saying conclude. So this shows many things, how the things are. And Rajya Sabha, sorry to say, I have complaints from the opposition as well. Like, there are better ways to protest. And, it's already said that on 8th August, the Manipur thing will be discussed. And Lok Sabha also, this thing is going on. No one is walking out. How much arrogant our leaders can be, just because one of the leaders is not allowed to speak, they walk out. Is this the duty? You have to, okay, I understand. This is a democratic questions, everything is there. But can you choose between one cause and neglect 100 other causes? Can you give them a clean stage to clear everything they have? Because see, government is following all the rules. You cannot complain they are not following the rule. They are doing all the rule. Parliament is a stage where I cannot go there. I have done my work. I have submitted comments, everything. It is the question of the opposition, the responsibility of opposition to ask the questions, and why it is important. People are saying, bill to clear ho jata. What is the meaning of it? But in Rajya Sabha, they don't have the clear majority. Even the parties who supported the bill, BJT, they have raised many questions. Even the MP Prashant Nanda, who was part of JPC also, he said, I'm supporting the bill on the security aspect, but he says this whole bill is going exemptions. Someone from YSR also raised this point. You should not open floodgates. There has to be tight gates also. You should not exempt them. So even parties who are supporting the, they are ally with the majority, but other oppositions has walked out. There's not a single dissenting vote, okay, against the bill. So this raises question of opposition as well, whether they really wanted to oppose it. Because see, when I talk to experts, they say this bill gives ample power to the states. States will love this kind of amendment. Okay, whether on the garb of excuse of the Manipur, they have actually supported the bill. This is one of the questions we have to think. Whether who's benefiting out of the bill? States are benefiting out of the bill because states has still to give the permission, everything. They didn't want the central government's thing. So this is one perspective I want to bring here. So I think it's wrong to point out just one political party. I think the entire parliament has disowned the cause.
If I could just get some clarity, Devaditya, when you say the states are benefiting out of the bill, so what do you mean by this when you say states are benefiting out of the bill?
So, as I told you, this Forest Conservation Act is not giving blanket exemption. It is just the approval of the central government, which is, as central government said that we are not going to approve through FSC. We are prescribing terms and conditions and whatever. Of course, there are certain things which central government said that, we will prescribe, which you can argue that affect the state's authority, but land is a state subject. Forest notified under the Indian Forest Act are controlled and managed by the state. You cannot divert a single inch of land which is under control of the state without their permission. Okay, the whole responsibility, the whole power now comes to the state. Okay, so state has still control of the forest, and you still need the permission of the state to do any of these activities. Okay, so states can do whatever they want. Just the difference is that the central's regulatory oversight is not there. So this is what I meant.
Okay, so just to conclude the show, Ayush, if I see when we look at the act, when we look at the not act till now because it hasn't got the presidential nod, it's still in the form of a bill. When we see that tribal communities, the forest dwelling communities, they will be impacted the most because previously you needed their consent to get the clearance, and they were part of the entire response mechanism, but now they are excluded. So this is also going against the constitutional provisions where they say that you need the consent of the tribal communities who are dwelling in the forest for such a long period.
I think forest dwellers have always been the problem for the contractors. Now, why I'm saying contractors is because these are people who have been dwelling around. They're living in the nature and the harmony with the nature. They know how things work in the forest. What are the things, how much they have to take, how much they have to give back. What is their capacity in it? What can they do as a forest? How many trees that they want to grow, and so on. Now you see, the major problem is for the contractors. The travel areas have always been in the control and the charge of it. And these have been the first line of control against anything goes wrong in the wildlife. Anything, if somebody, a timber mafia is doing some wrong, if a poacher is approaching the wildlife, these were the people who would inform. These were the first informants for the forest department. They have been doing this for centuries. But for last 5-10 years, you see there have been sudden changes after the Forest Rights Acts have come in, and also beyond that, the reason for bringing in Forest Rights Act. I think these people have been pointed out in the society that these people are basically using free lands and trying to enjoy their livelihood and income. Now, most of the people, I mean, there are certain tribes who are truly dependent on the forest. There are certain, so basically on the basis of education, they've been throwing them out. So why don't you educate your students and send them to schools that are established by the state or the government? There have been objections by the rest of the society on how they are dwelling in the forest when we are not allowed to enter those forests. So these kind of things and objections have been there in the society, and I think it's going to be very difficult for the tribals and the forest dwellers now or also in the future to basically stay in the cultural, traditional way that they've been using. So I think it's going to break the whole socio-cultural fabric, the idea of having sacred groves, the idea of having a cultural forest, the community forest that Devaditya was also mentioning too. I think in the past also and till date, there have been certain parts where we had one panchayat still exist, but their functioning has been reduced. They don't really have a say at all. So this has happened not just in this government. In the past, there have been a foolproof plan that is continuously being fixed. I think, as rightly said by Mr. Sena, it's not just the problem of one single party. It has been a problem of the whole parliament, actually. Though objections, there has been multiple ways of protesting against certain things, and there have been protests in the past. There have been people who have protested so strong that the ruling party had to change the entire thing. There have been examples like that. Why can't we do it like that? Why can't we educate more people? And then I would also try to point out to the advisory, what are they doing? Are they not fulfilling their jobs? Even if they're fulfilling their job, then their idea is to basically, their job is to guide the leaders into the right direction. What are you guys doing?
So overall, we need to critically look at the way the bill was passed without much discussion in both the houses, and especially the response that it managed to evoke from academicians and environmentalists too. So thank you, gentlemen, for joining the show and actually breaking down this complex bill, especially because it was so cleverly worded, most of the provisions. So thank you once again for joining and breaking it down so simply. Thank you.
Subscribe to the Federal's YouTube page for more news and updates.